And I'm hoping we're live. Yes, there's a little green button next to live, so I'll trust what it says. Thank you so much for joining our session today. We'll be talking about millennials and Generation Z. Millennials are technically Generation Y, but no one bothers using it because it came after Generation X, which is my generation, and I guess the generation perhaps some of our speakers here today. We'll be introducing them a little bit later on because they'll be having 5 minutes each to have their own opinions expressed without many interruptions, and then we get into more of a discussion mode. Now, I don't want to take too much time because I know that we had already a slight delay in terms of the overall day. I would like, however, to start with a little bit of a primer of what a generation actually means, because we talk a lot about it, but we don't really understand. Most of us, I guess, if you're a political scientist, you understand it extremely well. You probably have even a PhD in it. But the concept of a generation started in the late 19th century. The first one was from 1883 until you got to 1900s. And this is called the lost generation because so many people who were born in those years, especially men, died in the First World War, meaning that we started having a very large imbalance in terms of the number of people that each generation will have. And the same thing repeated because you had the greatest generation fighting Second World War, and then all of a sudden you end up in a situation where the baby boomers that came from 1946 until the mid-1960s, they were much, much larger than the previous generation. I mean, we're talking 60% more people were born and they're living longer than in a previous generation. And what happens then is that generations tend to skip, right? You expect a generation to be how long a person lives until the point in which, on average, they start having children. It isn't. It is actually a very flexible concept. So eventually it's stabilized into around 15 years. That's been the case for the last 3-4 generations. And you end up having this kind of context where baby boomers, because there are so many, they had lots of millennials, right? Millennials today are half of the working population of the whole planet. This is not something that is just a US statistic. It's across the board. And my generation, Generation X, from the mid-60s until 1980, was much smaller because it suffered the same implications, meaning that Generation Z are proportionately smaller. And we have to also mention Generation Alpha. Not many people talk about that, which is from around 5 years ago. They're the ones that are coming, and they're the ones who are going to be suffering lots of the consequences of the fiscal stimuli around the world for the pandemic and climate change. We have to keep a thought for them, maybe a thought and a prayer. But let's focus on millennials and Generation Z. So I'd like to pass the torch now to our first speaker. I do have a little bit of a cheat sheet here. He is Jacob Larsen, a future thinker and advisor of Global Utmaning. I don't know if my pronunciation was about right there. So Jacob is a future thinker and advisor at the think tank Global Challenges. The mission is to create platforms and cross collaborations between different industries, spanning across civil society, corporates, politics, NGOs, and academia. Jacob also has years of experience from Teach for All, Rotary, and Global Shapers, the World Economic Forum, 20 to 30-year-old forum, where he is heavily involved on both local and international levels. So he has a PhD, a postgraduate from Dublin City University with a master's in strategic management. Jacob, thank you so much for joining us today. You're basically representing the Western perspective on the millennials and Generation Z. Please take the floor.
Thank you so much, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. And I hope you're all well in these unusual times, we can say. And I would like to start off by actually mentioning the crisis itself and what that can bring us now in terms of this situation where we have the millennials and the Generation Z who would then compromise the 2/3 of the workforce in the future. I think crises are interesting in the sense that they can bring unity, collaboration, and partnerships along with it. Because we often find that the organizations in our different settings, they will work for the best outreach. They will have their own market and they will have their own field and their own talent that they want to work with. And now in times like these, I would say that we start seeing more changes. We're adapting, and then we're starting more collaboration. I think that's one of the things that are very interesting in these scenarios, especially when we're looking into the future and how we then can impact the future of the workforce. I would like to mention just an example from the country that I represent, where we have a young entrepreneurship forum and program. Annually, they take in 30,000 people, and that's a huge collaboration, which is between the government, public companies, private companies, corporates, and also senior entrepreneurs themselves. So this is a safe place, a platform where young individuals have the chance to build and create their own things, their own companies. They do their own financial reportings. They practice public speaking and pitches as well. And of course, they do this in a safe and fun environment where they work together with others. And I think that's just one example on how we can build the bridges between organizations, but also to the younger generations. And of course, that's just within entrepreneurship. And I just like to throw out there, imagine if we had this within multiple sectors, areas where we normally wouldn't go. It could be arts, for example. Imagine if we had the governments and the companies as well working alongside in doing this. Of course, there are great examples out there. I'm certain about that. But doing so even more, now we're talking about the mass scale here of young individuals coming in to the market. And also in terms of leadership, I've read multiple articles from INSEAD, Harvard, and along other great institutions. And what I see between the lines is that we're talking about a lot about value-based leadership. And I have a favorite myself, Simon Sinek, who talks about start with why. And for those who have seen the new Netflix series, The Playbook, Jill Ellis said, stay hard and true to yourself. And I think that's also highly interesting now for companies, organizations. Now where it's a little bit shaky with the COVID situation and where there's going to be challenges with the new groups of the workforces as well. I sometimes say that we should invite people to the room, but we should also dance with them. And that's, for me, like a metaphor that when we're going into projects, for example, make sure that all the people are invited. Make sure that they are part of the decision-making, that they can be peer-to-peer with their senior colleagues. So we all can work elaborately and have it as a learning process. And I think that's going to be a key factor in our leadership when we're integrating these young generations. Because they say that they want to be part of things. They want to feel that they are valuable and that they are represented. And that could be also a whole topic in itself, all the diversity perspectives that are related to that. But I find it's very interesting that they want to feel included and that they want to feel empowered. And times can be challenging for young individuals as well, new into their careers. And then, of course, it's really important that we, as those who are more senior, that we can help them, empower them, carry them through the tougher times as well, being the mentors, although it might be the case that they have to change project, they might have to change companies. But that's also one thing that, for example, the INSEAD showcased that this is something that could be one of the greatest challenges now as well, to empower them through the changes that they're going through. And I've also seen that in a research where they have scanned and discussed with the generation said in the Scandinavian countries, less than 50% would be interested in becoming leaders of tomorrow. And if that in that comparison to countries like India and Malaysia, where it's up to 77 and above, I think that's highly interesting. And what they've said is that it could be too stressful and challenging with work-life balance. So there will challenge us as well. How do we work with that? How do we ensure that people get even more inspired in their work, that they want to achieve greater things and really be the leaders of tomorrow as well? How do we ensure that they see the beauty of being a leader and not just the stressful aspects and things such challenging work-life balances. So I would say empathy, compassion, and also a great determination from the whole workforce itself would be great. And that we have this work based on collaboration, unity, and that we actually take on this challenge and be up for adapting and take on the changes that it could include. So I will leave you with that, and those are my initial thoughts. Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much for that, Jakob. And I would like to call on stage, so to say, Amandeep. So I'll do a quick intro. Amandeep Midda is the founder of Nerd9 Denmark. So you fully assume your nerdiness. I deeply respect that. I'm still a hidden nerd somewhere. I need to dig it out whenever it's required. So, and your intro will be, Amandeep is a technology professional with extreme interest in people and culture and has lived in. So you have been around. He was acting CTO of the first Danish fintech incubated at Techstars in New York, and otherwise is a mentor and coach for foreign professionals in Denmark, where he also founded this community called Nerd9. He regularly hosts events to discuss debate, technology, and social causes to drive fluid policy making with consensus building. Thank you so much for joining us, Amandeep. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Marcelo. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for this opportunity. As we already kind of started discussing around millennials, I think I would kind of put it in some concrete points, as you might have seen me hearing before. So, first of all, like what I see, having lived different places, different countries and cultures, and working with technology teams, nerds, mostly millennials, yes. The primary thing which I kind of differentiate here is like the millennial mindset that we are talking about, which mindset we are dealing with. So this is a set of people, this is a set of demography, if you say that, like the life is built on kind of a choice. Then that's an important difference. That compulsion is not like the previous conditions that you expect. That also means that they are not that grateful, but considering the other options available to them. And I think the point came already from Jakob that, especially in Scandinavia, 50% do not want to take a leadership position, like do not aspire that. That speaks something. Okay, let's not rush to the conclusions. Let's kind of run through a little more of a structure here. So it's pretty common that like, okay, I have studied law and then I was interested in programming. After working with a law firm, I want to switch over to programming career altogether. Can we make that smooth, or can there be like a less cost of switching? I leave that an open question. We kind of come back probably again. And then is especially in a COVID situation and what all the pandemic has led us into. Workforce is remote already. So how could you track such workforce? How could you track? Not in terms of micromanaging, but what I suggest is like tracking workforce on certain values when you start working with them. And one of the point which, while being in Denmark, I kind of raise and make some noise about is like ending the free internships. I think I will run a live poll as well on that. Free internships, according to me, they prevent the entire career conversation. Because if interns are seen as a free labor pool, which is a very predominant thing in Scandinavia, you do not have that skill conversation and career conversations happening at all. So given the mindset and given this kind of a circumstance of societal setup plus pandemic, so you can assume what kind of a mindset we are playing around with. Jacob already pointed on some some frameworks on driving collaborations. Again, depending on the culture where you come from, because we are dealing with diverse workforce, so there could be like coaches, like Tesla, for example, provides a coach to every new joinee, and otherwise the collaborative projects. Like in my prime employer, what we do is we have hackathons, yes, upon the new graduates joining. And then every 6 months, they have to kind of still work with the same set of people, same team they joined with, and kind of present an improvisation, and they're given hourly credits for that. What about the employers kind of trying to listen to their employees? Is it like coaching, a skill development conversation, engagement? In my opinion, over there is while dealing with the Nerd Nine, the community and the people who attend and talk, is better to kind of like set a career platform for all, multiple skills within the organization, and you are free to choose and sign up. And based on your interest, like you don't belong to a department, but you're okay to move with. And during the pandemic, we have seen that a lot of people who stick with their jobs, they have kind of diversified their skills. They have kind of found their new passions. And somebody totally from backend development programming switching to business intelligence. Like why? Because the person got time this time to prepare for those skills, or the new field open up for themselves. Just a small example. Big red button. Yeah, that's another kind of a conversation. Like when you should call it quit, or when you should kind of when you quit, or when you quit, is specifically a conversation when you need either a coach at a workplace, or you need a kind of a support structure that what tells you. Maybe this is a job, maybe this is an assignment which was promised to you, but it is actually not. What should be my criteria to call it quit? For example, like if I'm 7 months into a job and I'm suddenly want to change, and my organization tells me that no, before 1 year you cannot do that, and now you completed 1 year and you come to the point that you have two options. Which option I should take? Who should be providing that conversation? The organization itself, external coach, internal coach, and trust me, we're dealing with a generation whose life is built on choice. The conversations around the whether to join startup, whether to join a large, or a Goldilocks scenario of in a workplace which is large enough but works like a startup. I believe it's again through kind of a company should provide the framework. It could be coaching, it could be more collaborative projects where you kind of figure out like what is best for you. So leaving my kind of the end note over here is like we are dealing with people's free will, free choice, and giving them economic freedom. And that is the true empowerment for them to figure out what they want to do across the new opportunities which came out in this pandemic as well. That's all for me. Yeah, thanks.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Mandeep. And you're giving us a perspective that is not only from Denmark, what you're doing at the moment, but also the countries where you lived before, and multicultural perspectives of coming from India and being in a very different environment. Our next speaker also has a lot of experience, especially in Asia, with more than 30 countries active in terms of the business that has developed. So it's Vijay Eswaran. I hope that I pronounced it correctly, Vijay. He's a prominent Malaysian entrepreneur, speaker, philanthropist, and author. Founder and executive chairman of the QY Group of companies, a multinational conglomerate with interests in direct selling, retail, financial services, real estate, hospitality, and education. QI Group is headquartered in Hong Kong and Kuala Lumpur, with operations in more than 30 countries. And Mr. Vijay is very passionate about developing the next generation leadership. So I think that we could really benefit from his experience in terms of how the current leaders of the world can support the future generations, millennials and Generation Z more specifically, in terms of fostering their creativity and giving them a new horizons to explore. So Vijay, please take the floor. You're most welcome.
Well, let me begin by saying what Jakob did very aptly. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to all, depending on the zones that you're in. In a sense, I think, first of all, we need to begin to look at the fact that everything is in flux. So the rules that we basically grew up with, the rules that we lived in until COVID, pre-COVID, and all of that, is up in the air. So basically, the cards are being reshuffled everywhere. My viewpoint would come in from a slightly different angle because I'm also an employer. And from the company viewpoint, we are employers, as Marcelo has pointed out, in 30-odd countries. We are e-commerce based, so we also have to deal with a very active customer database. We have somewhat in 2015, we crossed over the 10 million barrier or network across the world. We have conventions where the customers come, and the customer and staff divisions in terms of age groups is very interesting because they are now pretty much the same. Gen Z as well as millennials are accounting for roughly about 70% of staff. It's over something like 1,500 people scattered in 30 countries. And then again, you have the same mix of 70% being millennials and Gen Z among the customer database. So for us now, both the Gen Zs and the millennials have become critically important in many ways. Understanding them, working with them, and dealing and communicating with them has become a more fundamental part of the exercise and strategy of marketing and everything else that we do online. But the pandemic is a critical composition of what has led to all this. And very clearly, we are seeing what has happened because you have the Gen Zs dealing with everything from school closures and shifts in routine to the millennials who are structurally having to deal with a world that is, in a way, broken up because the world that they thought they were being prepared for while they were all the way through education. You see, the millennials basically went to educational systems, particularly in Asia. I think it's pretty much the same in Europe and North America and elsewhere. We have an education system that is primarily designed in the early part of the 19th and 20th century. And this is staffed by people, academics, teachers, lecturers, and the like, who have been structured again for the 20th century. And trying to prepare them for jobs in the 21st century. So that's a total disconnect. So the education system, in a sense, has failed them. It is not providing them the venue for which they can actually prepare themselves for the workplace. So this has resulted in the fact that we now need to basically think how we can attract these people, hold these people, and actually work with both the Gen Zs and millennials moving ahead. This has resulted in us coming up with different ways to support our current leadership and to inspire them. And this begins with dialogue. For us, it's interesting because the dialogue has opened up a lot of different thinking. Our mainstream thinking had to be restructured. When we sit and talk to the millennials, their expectations are very different. There's also a cultural difference. I mean, Jakob talked about the fact that, more than half of the youth in Scandinavia are not very much interested in leadership, whereas in places like India and Malaysia, the figure is much higher, 70%, I believe he said. And I totally agree with that. But having said that, a lot of that has to do with a cultural difference as well. this work-life division, in a sense, which is so critically important to Western cultures, is a little bit different in Asia. In Asia, as Amandeep will probably recall, I don't know when he last left the Indian subcontinent, but work is survival. It's a lot more about, being able to survive, being able to support the family, deal with certain responsibilities and duties that are, beyond the need of a division between, recreation and vocation. So this is where the difference perhaps is becoming a little bit more visible within the statistics. See, for the there's also a division, because to talk in a pan-Asian context means we're talking of various cultures. This is by far the biggest continent. So to speak about it, in a sense of an Asian culture per se would be technically wrong, because there is no such thing. So if one were to go to the Far East, and here I'm talking about Northeast Asia, which is Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China, and the like, their approach to work is incredible, I would say. It's very different from the rest of the planet. I have worked in various places and in various continents, actually. But their work culture in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and so on is in a fashion to try to symbolize this. In Sweden, I'm sure they say good morning when they cross each other on their way to work, and boy, do we have to go to work again, kind of thing. But, in Korea, for instance, when they greet each other, they say, work hard. Their common phrase is fighting, go in fighting. And that is an attitude towards work, because work for them is not really different from their so-called, recreation, rest, and so on and so forth. They actually embrace the work culture. Hence, the stress comes from a totally different position. Am I doing well at work, as opposed to am I getting time off to be able to go to the beach? So basically, the differences in the culture also are reflected in places like Malaysia and Southeast Asia and India. In India, predominantly, I think Amandeep might have an opinion on this as well. There is many different classes to look at, and to each class there's a different mentality. So you see, you cannot basically put a label and say this is the Indian response, because again, there's no such thing. But what is happening is that the millennials have brought together the world in a fashion that has never happened before. The millennials, be they from the African continent or from Central Asia or from India, or for that matter, the Far East and so on, in a way speak a language that's very much more similar. The things that they want to see happen is very interesting. They want sustainability. They want a better, a life health-wise. They are very clear on the point that the previous generations have screwed up in a big fashion. So there's no real respect, so to speak, for their predecessors, and they feel the world is being handed to them in a basket that is a total chaotic mess. And you cannot blame them for that, in a sense. But what is very interesting is that they do believe that their generation is more creative. They do believe that, and they have an affability to digital technology that none of us did. They were faster to react to iPads, tablets, and so on than any of our generations or before us. Hence, they are at home in the digital technology. They also know how to turn that to their advantage, using things like, for us, actually, Facebook is cutting edge technology. At least it was at the time that, I joined the workforce. But today, it's outdated and it's actually considered to be almost Neanderthal. So in a sense, they have a whole bunch of stuff up there leading from TikTok, which incidentally, despite all of its challenges, is proving to be one of the most creative fields out there. Snapchat and things of this nature, which they turn into digital savviness. They actually make it, using an entrepreneurial spirit that is amazing, they make it into a different field of play. And they have enriched us in terms of business. And our business, which initially took a little bit of a dive at the beginning of the COVID era, started to pick up again, primarily because of this factor, because of both the fact that 70% of our staff and workforce belong to the Millennial Gen Z group, and likewise with the customer database. They were talking the same language. They reacted better. They recovered better. They adapted, adjusted, and accommodated to the new norm, so to speak. Now, whether or not things will ever go back to the pre-COVID era, one thing's for sure: many things are going to remain, and they're going to remain the same moving ahead. So the thing that I think we need to do is to encourage and provide ways for the Gen Zs and millennials to actually express themselves and to be able to choreograph and obtain certain experiences out of them in order to start working to make sure. Mentoring them is a critical point, and I agree with that with both Amandeep and Jakob. In a sense, for us, the mentoring starts with cross-generation mentoring, because here we have a lot of people, baby boomers and Gen X like us and so on, who are carrying so much in terms of life experience. And this life experience is a critical component which the millennials perhaps need to complete their equation, so to speak. This Amandeep's position on them not being very grateful is something I have to agree with. I don't think it's so much about being grateful, although I do agree with Amandeep that that is the expression that is felt out there. It's more about them not being able to attach a value. They are not able to attach a value to what they're receiving. Hence, the point of gratitude or ingratitude doesn't arise. They just don't see a value in it. Hence, their value systems are somewhat askew. And the mentoring is very critical for that aspect, because it allows that crossover of cultures. You see, in Asia, many of our cultures have survived through oral traditions. Hence, our passing on from generation to generation doesn't happen through schools or universities, academics, or any kind of scriptural knowledge or any kind of written form of generational input. It is always oral. And these oral traditions are very critical, and that's what we need to now evolve and develop in the workplace. The oral traditions, which I look at in terms of the cross-generation mentoring, is what carries on and carries forward. And I think that if one is looking to the far-off future, which is in essence what we're talking about today, it begins with the fact that we need to be able to build a bridge between the so-called past, even though the follies have led to where we are today, and to the millennial Gen Z generation working together. And that would be the basis upon which any kind of progress moving forward would entail, in my opinion. So back to you, Marcelo.
Well, thank you so much, Vijay. And I have a few comments, but I'll keep them short. The first one is that indeed you cannot compare Asians and put them on the same basket. Is the same as in my family on my mom's side is from the Amazon. Is basically saying, Native Americans. That includes Alaska, Patagonia, and Arizona in between. So they all have very different characteristics. And the one comment I'll make in terms of Sweden versus South Korea, the last time Sweden went to war was probably against Napoleon in a significant scale. And South Korea, they have a very imminent threat just next door. And that really makes a big difference, because you realize the value of life, the value of freedom, the value of happiness. And in Sweden, they have it easy. Good for them. I do hope that they remind themselves that this was hard fought many centuries ago. And in the rest of the world, I think there is a little bit more gratitude than you'd have in the more kind of established societies where life is perhaps a little bit easier than it should be. I will try to get Kevin Lee, who's our next speaker, to join us. We're doing that in a slightly different way. I'm giving him the microphone because of some technical issues. So I'm hoping that Kevin will be joining us now. Kevin, please say hi. Yes, there you are. welcome, and I hope things are going well in Toronto. I'll do a very quick introduction, and then you can have your slot. So Kevin is the COO of China Youthology, and he's also the managing partner there, and a leading China futurist and consumer-centric innovation expert. He's an executive consultant for marketing, innovation, and purpose-driven brands with companies like Nike, Apple, P&G, BMW, L'Oreal, Danone, Intel, etc. And he's a frequent speaker, most notably at the Microsoft CEO Summit and Cannes Lions International Festival. I guess it was virtual this year, and much more. He's equally a goalkeeper in association with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We had a great conversation about Western and Eastern perspectives when we were catching up in the preparation for this call. Thank you so much for joining us, Kevin. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, and I hope you guys can hear me, and I apologize for the technical difficulties on my side. But yeah, hello from Toronto. It is about 4:50 in the morning for me, so very late night, but happy to join you guys on this very important discussion. But I'm representing, of course, China and Asia, and that's where I've been working and building my career for the last 15, 20 years. And of course, my time has been spent understanding the next generation, observing them, and working with them and bringing youth-driven change to the world, specifically to the corporate world as well, and to the marketplace. So it's great to hear your thoughts. And I want to start off by first responding to some of the some of the statements that have been made, previously around how maybe this next generation is not really interested in taking on leadership. And for me, that the response there is to ask the question: well, what word did we use when we asked them the question about leadership? Because of course, in a young person's mind, if you're asking them about leadership, they're like, I don't want to take over. I don't want to take over some large, arcane organization. That's probably not the thing that they think about for leadership. But the amazing thing is that young people are extremely creative and they're ambitious, for them, they don't ask the question, do I want leadership? They ask the question, I want to do something. And if it just so happens that a lot of people follow me in doing it, then that's great. But nobody in this generation is going out there saying, I just want to grab leadership. It's more of, I want to make a difference. I want to do something in this world. And whether or not leadership comes as a byproduct of that is something that they will find themselves in. And we're seeing that, of course, with a whole new generation of leaders stepping up, none of them wanting to be leaders, but them just wanting to make change. And I definitely see that, whether we're in COVID or, pre or post, definitely in China, even pre-COVID, you just saw young people are completely ambitious and creative. I mean, the reality is that in China and in Asia, nobody is waiting for the classroom to come back. Nobody's waiting for people to come back to the office. Everyone is extremely busy doing what they want to do. I mean, in China, we see all the young people as live streamers today, all of them opening up their own e-commerce shops, all of them, working hard at esports, all of them, on Minecraft. They are entrepreneurs by talent, by nature. They don't have to think about, they don't have to be trained as entrepreneurs. They are creative and they're always doing something, pursuing, not just for fun, but they're pursuing with expectation that it will build. And so, that's the young person that we're finding in Asia, an extremely ambitious and creative person who's hungry to do something. It doesn't have to be big picture, but they're trying to find opportunities to create a mark in the world, or at least create a way for themselves. But that's where some of the key issues are for us today. That's where some of the key challenges are. I think, especially for Asia and for China, I think one of the key issues that we have to deal with is that we need to change the narrative of what success looks like. Today it's just about, you got to go to the Ivy League. The government just talks about you have to pass the test and get the high marks. But we all know today, especially all of us in this room, that the path to success is so diverse, and it has to be celebrated and it has to be supported. There has to be a lot more narrative to say, hey, we are going to support diverse experiences that will get you to different areas. I mean, I'm encouraged by, when Google and Facebook, they talk about how their hiring practices don't really look at your degree, but really look at your diverse experiences. But the question is, do more people talk about that? Do more companies talk about that? And does the state talk about that? But that's the reality, because if the young person in their society, in their family, does not get people saying, hey, your diverse experiences will be recognized and will be of value, it creates in them deep tension, and they question whether or not they can try. And so the first thing that has to be broken is the mindset and the heart set to help them think and to know if I pursue different ways, it will amount to something. And we as a society have to change that narrative. So that's the first thing that we definitely have to see. I say the second thing, especially for China and Asia, for this creative and ambitious generation, what is the key thing lacking for them is creating equal access to materials and resources. Now, materials and resources don't just mean money, right? It doesn't mean school books. What I really mean here are things like open data, right? I mean things like open challenges, right? When you look at what the Obama administration did in opening the government data, when people can do that and allow people to use that data to do different things, that's real resources. That's real things that people can use to create, and you can actually produce something that will offer something. When all those billion-dollar prizes on space invite people from different backgrounds to think about how do I launch a satellite into space, that's an open challenge that more people can take part of. If young people have more of these resources and more of these challenges, this will be the platform for them to really think creatively. And again, that has to be collaborated with their school systems, with their education systems, and with the industry as well. Well, it can't just be something on the side, but it has to be something where the education institutions and the industry recognize that if I pursue these different accelerators, incubators, open challenges, these are things that actually have a job at the end of it, or these are some things that have accolades and recognition at the end of it. These are things that they do. Taking a page from where we are in China, we have grown out of the success of special economic zones. I would propose that we have to have something more like special education zones, where it's much deeper collaboration between industry and education in opening things up. At China Youthology, we do a lot in terms of helping companies to become platforms for young people, where they open up their products, their services, their R&D, so that young people can use them as free resources to create something new. And the companies that are able to do that, to open themselves up, it's not to train them as mentors, to train them into good little employees, but it's to open up the entire company as a platform so that young people can actually build something new. And the companies that know how to do that are the ones that are innovating further. They're the ones that are innovating faster. And so that's what we do at Youthology to help them out. I think the final thing that I want to mention here is around, of course, mentorship, which is a topic that has become a theme from many of the speakers before. And I would agree that mentorship is really important. In China, people are hungry for mentorship. But I would also say that the mentorship that is needed, while cross-generational is nice, and nobody will say no to that kind of mentorship, the one that's truly needed for the Chinese young person is the peer mentorship. And the peer that is maybe only 5 years ahead of them, because the reality is that in China, their world has changed so quickly that the previous generation, their experiences are almost obsolete. The last generation didn't have social media, they didn't have AI, they didn't have big data, but this generation does. And so they need somebody that's just 5, maybe just 10 years ahead of them, that has some experience in the world that they live in, to help them work through what are the interesting options and the new creative ways that I can network the opportunities around me. And so that's definitely something that we don't have in China. We don't have, young people cannot find access to mentors. They can't find people that are close to them, that are like-minded or like-hearted, but that's definitely the opportunity that we want to see. So anyways, those are a few things that I want to throw out today, some of the interesting opportunities and challenges that we have coming from Asia.
All right. Can you guys hear me? Because I'm having some issues with videos appearing. You good? Yeah. So let me try to put the video on again. The screens kind of keep on vanishing. So as you might have noticed, we went through a journey around half of the world, right? We started with Sweden, and then popped by Denmark, via India, we arrived in Malaysia. We visited 30 countries in Asia through Vijay's experience over so many years of success. And then we popped by China with kind of a little bit of a virtual presence from Toronto. And now we're going back to Europe via Russia and the Netherlands with Alexander Stommels, who is the president of the Circle of Sustainable Europe in Belgium. And he is a generation Y/millennials, Generation Y being the other name for millennials. His shape used strategic reorientation and developed new business opportunities combined with current and future environmental projects with a top-down and bottom-up approach towards sustainability. Furthermore, he's an accredited lobbyist. I have no idea how you become a lobbyist. I guess it must be a very interesting process. You must lobby to become a lobbyist, right? In the European Parliament, and a young expert at the World Economic Forum. So,
well, thank you, Marcelo. If I may start. And thank you for this chance. Hello, everyone. I'm now back at home because thanks to COVID-19, everything need to be really outside and informal. Because if you want to do something in Brussels, do it by a restaurant, not at the Parliament. At the current moment, I see so much of possibilities, but in the same time, also a lot of struggling. The biggest 3 points that I still see as a message for the youth and also to tell others is that we have our problem, but in the same time, we also want to make action and impact in the same time. So what I see in the youth in the current moments, what I didn't have because I had an other structure because of more culture, is there is too much of responsibility in the same time. So it's really important that if you start with something, you already need to have already so much points, not only for yourself, for your agenda, for responsibility, internet making it big. So indeed, what already were told about what kind of possibilities there are, we need some assistance with it. And how to start it? Well, simply starting with little steps, thinking about the possibilities around you, not going straight away international because you get simply too much of information. So start with a little initiative project and try to develop it to convince the municipality or the province or the governmental part to give you some advice. Even feedback is already welcome. Not straight away that they give you money or advice straight away, only as feedback. With this feedback, you can learn so much because if you try to connect with the people and asking for the feedback, they sometimes like you more than if you ask them for money or ask them for a right answer. So that is for the topic of just a moment from the situation of the problem. In the same time, I have experienced a lot of gaps. You maybe also experience a lot of misunderstanding. People speak about things, but they cannot find it in the policy. They cannot find it on the internet. They cannot. So it's a little bit how you can acknowledge yourself with the right information. And I tried it by stepping out of my own comfort zone. So starting not only looking at things that I learned at school or heard by my family or by organization, no matter at all. I started with speaking with other cultures, other countries, and asking what kind of things they are doing in other ways. So by this acknowledgeable topic, I started to understand that our world is bigger and more difficult than I ever known before. So instead of having the responsibility by doing yourself, it's really good to advise the young people to do never it alone. Also for other, because if you look at organizations, if you look at two entrepreneurs, if they apply for European projects, they have always partners, they have always some stakeholders who are giving feedback. So if you want to make success, try to make a nice team around you, not just friends that make enjoyable steps and good, funny information part, but people who are making you stronger by finding skills that you still haven't developed, so they can help you with it. And at the same time, you can help them. So it will be in the same time from both directions a big boomer. And I already spoke with some youth that are trying that, and they're making indeed really big steps, because one is only focusing on writing, one is on the internet. So if they're doing what they seriously can do really well, and also have the people around them that always can be as a backup, they have more convinced in the current future than at the moment. Because if I look at my own situation, sometimes even now they're asking me what kind of education I did, what kind of people I know. So always I need to prove something to make a further step. And if you have something really nice with the group, you always have some preparation for it, and you also know how to engage with people. So beside of that, try as much as possible connect and call with people that you really like writers, journalists. Do not only look at social media. Try to find the people who is the writer or the person who had developed the knowledge of, developed the information that you're reading. If you speak with this kind of people, you get sometimes even more information or earlier information than that you can read or can find. Even so, beside of the bubble, there's also a problem with respect and trust. If you look at some kind of corporation or network, they always look at you like a person. So it's really important to focus on your personality, focus on how much you trust yourself, because you can say that you trust other, but first try to look at yourself, what you can, what you should do, or where you need help, and be also always concrete and fair at the beginning. So the people that you want to work with have no surprises. And in the same time, try to have a good communication always, no matter at all. If you have something happening, communicate it well, because maybe you have the problem, but your other partner or colleague can help you with it. So do not wait till the end, because this is still happening, and it's understandable that sometimes it is. But if you try to communicate as much as possible, you get even more communication in rolling down the hill. About the topic action, it's really good to also acknowledge what kind of activities, what kind of sessions they are, because you see so much happening, even in COVID-19, so much of digital events, you cannot already find out what you want to select. So it's really important to first look what kind of interest you have, which kind of people you really like to join, make further steps with the interest, and not going each week to the same group, because we have so much communities where people are sitting in the same community for 4 for 8 years and do not connect with other communities. So try also make the step by some topics that you not understand, or your community not understand or not agree. Try to acknowledge it further than it's in the situation from that point. In the same, I'm happy that I have the guts that when I started with social engagement, with networking 8 years ago, that I've developed 7 years ago an initiative to connect youth and elderly together. And when I see how much of knowledge and big impact it can develop in which kind of direction, if it is space or artificial intelligence or sustainability or entrepreneurship, if you find the people who are really interested in it, and you organize or find some nice event that they can connect for sharing the knowledge, young person with the student points or extra grades for futuristic jobs, and people in pension or in a nice function that they do something for the future, it's a really nice step. And I did it for 7 years. I had experienced that I was really amazed how much there is possible, not only in my own country, but in other places. And I also can say it fair, thanks to that I'm multicultural, I did more of success and knowledge in international way than in my own home country. So it's a little bit experience that you need to make to develop. And also try to go not only at activities, but check all the projects that are available. just like Horizon 2020 platform of European Union. You can find so much of projects that are already accepted with the people, with kind of information. And if you want to be involved, they are open to answer your questions. So instead of thinking about, I will do it because it's the chance to make the change, it's really important to look what kind of current projects there are, and they can add you in and make the project stronger. So Marcelo already said about how I became a lobbyist this year. Well, I got luck. Since several years, I know a lot of lobbyists from the age of 30, 40, 50 years. So they're already developed in around 10 or 20 years. And they told me that they surely want to help with my ideas because I already shared a lot. So it's sometimes the people know me because I already spoke with a lot of people. But they wanted to help me because they saw some things that they forgot to do by themselves, because they developed their own mission, vision, get a job, get a house, get a family. So it's each person has also their own life, and it's indeed understandable that not each person can do everything for others. So I'm really also happy that I got the chance, got the knowledge, and got the accreditation at the Parliament in March. And by this point, I'm trying in the future also helping students and master young professionals to learn them how to lobby, how to get accreditation, and make further steps. Because you see so much of action marching outside, but if you look at lobbying places, I do not see very much young people. So there's a really big gap beside of the other steps. And to make my points final, it's also all about the impact. Sometimes a little drop is making more progress than the information or the things that you find on the internet, because it's your own personal drop. And if you make it for your personal really important, you get also the adrenaline, enthusiasm to do more. So instead of only looking what others do, try to focus on what you could do with others, and try to cooperate in a nice cooperation that you can go in a partnership by scaling up with community stakeholders and experienced people that are respecting you and
Alex, I'm so
you. Yes.
Less than 3 minutes. We literally have less than 3 minutes to do the final thoughts. So I would suggest that anyone who would like to follow up with the Brussels and the EU to contact Alex via the app. I would give you 30 seconds each because that's what we've got. I hope that we can extend it a little bit. My own final thoughts is that it's not only the private sector. The public sector should also be fostering millennials and Generation Z. Of course, they're trying their best, and try to have a dialogue with them to understand how they can improve those efforts. Above all, I'd love to see millennials becoming mentors to Generation Z. That's a conversation that I had with a few of you, so that they can learn how to become mentors, and they have a crosser link to the actual generation below them, and Generation Z, up and coming ones, are the most educated, the best prepared, is the easiest possible today to create a new business. So let's make sure that they have a chance to pay all the bills that we are racking up now with the pandemic. So that said, Jakob, 30 seconds.
Absolutely. So I hear between the lines as well that a few of us are talking about mentorship and peer-to-peer relations, and I totally agree with that. And I also feel that let our actions be a statement in itself. The actions we within our organizations do that will lead towards impact, because they want to see that, and bring them along. And let's collaborate on it between governments, public and private, and so on forth. So thank you. Over to Marcelo.
Fantastic. Amandeep, your turn.
I would say that let's look at all the positives that pandemic has brought. The collaboration can be more international, more virtual right now, and let's not seek one global answer. It could depend on different cultures and geographies, and let's keep these conversations stirring up and going. Yeah, that's
fantastic. Vijay, your turn, Vijay. Thanks again for joining. I think you're on mute.
Yes, sorry. Yes, in a nutshell, I'd like to be able to answer the point on cross mentoring, as I talked about, or cross-generational mentoring. And I think that's important to address that a little bit more. It's not just about technical mentoring that I'm talking about, as Kevin was talking. The issue is that you might know as much as you do on the technical scale of social media, this, that, and the other, but you wouldn't be able to balance your own checkbook. So sometimes it's just good to be able to get that. There are things I learned from my granddad, that he couldn't have taught me in school, but extremely important in terms of life. So there are many questions in life that we can learn from another generation. So I'd like to leave that. One quick point. There's a question raised by a Mohana in the audience who says that, does Gen Z also think work is survival in India? You could be 2 streets away and be in a totally different mindset in India. And I think that's the answer for that. Thank you.
Oh, fabulous, Ajay. Thank you so much for your support with the session and the whole event. I'll try to get Kevin back. Let's see if that works, getting him as one of the speakers.
Hi.
Kevin,
you guys got me?
it's late in Toronto. Awake. You had time to go and get a coffee. So your 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, I am inspired by everyone and what you're sharing. I think, again, I've been inspired mostly on the stories around mentorship and cross connection. And I think that, for me, it's about how do we make those relationships and that partnership more public? How do we share the stories with more people that, collaboration is possible and is accessible and actually amounts to something, instead of it just being like, where you swipe left and swipe right? How do you do it where you find quality relationships that are going to change your life and change the path of the people in your community? I think, when you share more of those stories, it inspires more people to think, wow, they should be looking out and they should be finding new connections and better quality connections than just the ones that they browse on their social media.
Well, that's great. So now we move to Alexander for your final 30 seconds to wrap your thoughts. Sorry for the interruption earlier.
Yes. Well, beside of my presentation, I would like to inform everyone to just try as much as you can and believe that it's possible, because no matter if today is not happened or tomorrow, it can be happening once in your lifetime. So try to convince yourself to take that step and try to share it with others. So maybe even if you cannot retrieve it by your own ideas or knowledge or your investment time, maybe other person can realize your idea or a thing that you can be really happy about it. So it's really the step to make more open, and also to try more respect and trust people. And if you are not trusting, try to develop a contract instead of a lot of other meetings, because we like to make further steps. And by that point, if you have some mistaken, just try at the beginning always, and not making interruption in the meantime, or hearing yeah but no but, or yeah maybe, or I don't know. These are things that seriously need some more extra time, and these people can work on themselves. You can help them, but of course if they tell you, and be open-minded. So get yourself in a good basic step, and get a growth mindset eventually together.
Oh, fantastic. So this is a wrap. We slightly late, so I hope we didn't take much time from the plenary session going on right now. I would just like to say that millennials are half of the workforce. Gen Z are politically very active. They they drink less, they're more focused on their careers. It's looking pretty good for the next generation, who are the alphas. And let's start talking alpha, right? And these are the 10-year-olds that we have now, 5 to 10 years old, that are going to inherit the earth. And let's try to make sure that the job is not harder than it should be. Thank you again so much for this little tour from Europe via India to Asia, and then back by Russia to Europe with some holidays in Toronto. Amazing group of people. Loved being here with you, and I hope to have a chance to meet in person very soon. So take care and all the best. Right, guys. I believe that we may have to wrap this up. Yeah, you can. These are the instructions that we didn't receive. How to leave the session. We can leave with a little red button at the bottom left. I'm assuming that you all want to go back to other sessions. So my assumption is we can just close this window and try to go back to Run the World, the app or the website, and we'll be able to rejoin as a participant.
Nice meeting you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.
Tim, take care.